Hi folks, I hope all of you are doing well and having a good week so far. In this lecture, as you can see, I'm going to talk to you about the uses of commas versus semicolons. Now, I know and apologize in advance. I realize that this is not the most exciting topic in the world, but the reason I'm going over it with all of you is in all the years that I've been teaching these courses, whether online or face to face, I've always found that this one issue, when to use commas or semicolons, is the one that kind of gives people the most headaches. So, in addition to this lecture, I'm including a web link right below it in the module where it's located that I think reinforces a lot of these same issues. But by the same token, I'm wise enough to know that this lecture and that web link probably are not going to answer all of your questions about commas and semicolons. So, if at any point in the remainder of the course you need more help with that, don't hesitate to contact me. That's what I'm here for. Okay, so the first things I'm going to do here is, before I show you some examples, I'm going to go over the general rules, if you will, as to when to use a comma or a semicolon, and then I'll show you some sets of examples that I hope will reinforce the rules that I've got listed here. So first off, the rules for semicolons are as follows. Most often, we use semicolons to connect two independent clauses, sometimes more than two, but usually just two independent clauses within a larger sentence. Now, at this point, you're probably you may be wondering, hopefully not, but you may be wondering, well, what constitutes an independent clause or a simple sentence? Hold on, I hope to demonstrate that in a moment, but again, after I demonstrate that, after you go through this material, if it's still not clear to you, by all means, send me a message on Canvas. Call me, whatever you want to do as far as that goes is fine. I'm here to help. Anyway, back to the PowerPoint. I rambled there, I'm sorry. And the other way that we use semicolons is as a super comma. Now I realize again that sounds a little weird, but I'll show an example that I hope will clarify the matter for all of you. Again, we use commas most often to separate or list items in a series. We sometimes, under a very specific set of circumstances, can also use commas between simple sentences or independent clauses, whichever term you want to use. Sometimes we also use commas to attach words to the front or back of a sentence. And finally, sometimes we'll use commas, we'll place them, rather, on both sides of a non-essential component. Now, some of you might be wondering, what is a non-essential component? Good question, but again, hold on. Hopefully, that'll be a little more clear at the end. Okay, so look at the first set of examples that I've got here. I'm gonna go over one of these sets of examples with you, and leave you to kind of process the other on your own. If you have questions, that's what I'm here for. But I don't wanna make this an overly lengthy lecture. In addition to being a boring one, I wanna try to not have you hate me by the end of this. That's kind of my goal. So, remember I told you, we most often use semicolons to connect simple sentences within a single larger sentence. So, basic question, sort of English 101, or if you will, English 1050. What constitutes a simple sentence? A simple sentence is a sentence that has to have these three components, and they'll usually be in this order: a subject, a verb, and an object. So, let's look at this clause together. Calvin Johnson, subject. Verb is intransitive verb, sometimes called a non-action verb. And then finally, the object, what is he? He is a wide receiver. Now, good modifies our understanding of what type of wide receiver he is. Now, on the other side of the semicolon, this time our subject, playing off of the proper name, Calvin Johnson, is he. This subject is he. Verb is the conjugated verb pair. Has caught. What has he caught? Touchdown passes. Again, while the word many is influential to the sentence, in and of itself, if we just said he has caught many, at that point you would still have to ask, he has caught many what? Many touchdown passes? Many colds? Joking a little bit there. But, so, this is an example of why we would use the semicolon, because we have the subject, verb, and object on either side. Now, this one I'm not going to break down as meticulously as I did the last. I want to point out that there are most conjunctions that would occur between the independent clauses, like the conjunction however here. Most of the time, we can still use the semicolon, as we've done here. As you'll see in a little bit, though, there is a very specific list of conjunctions that when they occur between the independent clauses, you would then use a comma between the independent clauses or simple sentences rather than a semicolon. But because however is not one of those unique conjunctions, if you will, we still use the semicolon here. Okay, the idea of a semicolon as a super comma. To demonstrate that, basically the idea is we sometimes have to use a semicolon even when we're not dealing with multiple independent clauses, simply to bring clarity to the ideas that we're trying to express. So look at the pairs of sentences that I've got here. I've traveled to New York, New York, Los Angeles, California, and Bellevue, Ohio. You'll have to forgive me there. I gave a shameless little plug to my hometown. Haven't lived there in some years now, but still have fond memories in spite of the fact that I had train tracks in my backyard as a child. But anyway, I'm digressing. Sorry about that. So, now look at the two sentences. And on a very basic level, see how in the, sorry about that, but see how in the grammatically incorrect sentence here, all these commas between the city and state designations kind of run together to the point that a reader could potentially lose focus on what you're trying to express versus in the sentence here. Look how we have city, state, combination with the comma after the state before we go on to the next pair, semicolon, and then before the last example, city, state combo, right there, semicolon. Similar principle here. We have a list of celebrities that the person met. Oh my gosh, sorry about that. I'm gonna go. Darn you, Windows 8, why do you hate me? It doesn't hate me, it's just a silly computer program that does little things like that to annoy the heck out of me. Sorry about that though, folks. Anyway, back to our presentation. Notice how we have the list of celebrities. Their names are followed by their careers. But in the first of the two pairs, notice how the overuse of commas could potentially cause some confusion as far as what the writer is trying to express in this example here. However, look at the clarity that the semicolon provides here, because we have an even pairing of actor or actress's name. I guess not always actor or actress, but different celebrities. But we have their name and comma. We have that pairing there. Name, profession, separated by the comma. And then finally, name and profession separated by the comma. So again, the idea of a semicolon as a super comma, as silly as that may sound, is simply to bring the idea of being able to bring some clarity to what you're trying to express as the writer. Hello, silly Windows 8, what are you doing? There we go, sorry about that. Now, on to commas. This is probably the usage of commas that you're most familiar with, and that is, we most often use commas to separate items in a series or list within a sentence. So look at the list of items that we have here. What does Shayna want? Shayna wants a doll, a dress, and a pony for her birthday. Notice that the comma separates these two examples here. Now you could put a comma after dress here before the word and. Many people do, and because that's one of the traditional ways that we're taught to use commas, I typically, when I read and grade your essays, wouldn't mark that wrong unless I felt that putting a comma there in some way interfered or obscured what you were trying to say in the rest of the sentence. But you don't, strictly speaking, need to put a comma before that in conjunction and, or if you're limiting the list through the use of a word like or, you don't actually need the comma there. The only time that you absolutely need a comma before one of those conjunctions is when we have an independent clause on either side of that conjunction. But as you can see in both of these examples, based on what I just told you about independent clauses, on either side of these, on either side of these on either side of this conjunction here, or that one there, we most definitely do not have an independent clause, and therefore, strictly speaking, do not need a comma here or here. but we need one there to separate the first two items in the list that aren't divided by a conjunction. Okay, now there's that kind of thing that we've been going around, that I've been tap dancing around. Remember I told you there are certain conjunctions that when they occur between independent clauses, you have to put a comma before that conjunction, and therefore between the independent clauses. And this right here, if I can point to it without messing up my screen, these are the list of conjunctions, that when they occur between independent clauses, you would put commas before them, as I did right here. So, I've listed them like this. The conjunctions are but, and, so, yet, or, nor, and for. If it helps you to remember them, and it does help some students, whenever you're trying to remember what are the conjunctions that when they occur between the independent clauses, that you would put the comma before the conjunction. Try, darn you Windows 8, if it helps, remember the acronym fanboy. So if you think about it in terms of fanboy, you would list them like this: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so, to fill out the letters in that acronym, fanboys. So I'll do it again: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So again, when one of those conjunctions is between the independent clause, we put a comma before that conjunction. However, as you see here, when there's no conjunction at all between the independent clause, as we have in the latter example here, when there's no conjunction, or when there's essentially any other conjunction between the independent clauses, then you would revert to what we would usually do. We would do semicolon here, and then for a longer conjunction, like however, to offset it from the rest of the independent clause that follows it, you would do semicolon there and comma there. But again, remember, we only put the commas by themselves between independent clauses when the independent clauses are divided or united, whatever way you want to think about it, by one of the fanboys' conjunctions. Okay. Commas attaching words to the back or front or back of a sentence. Look at the examples that I have here. The independent clause in both of these examples is Albert Einstein was a genius. Albert Einstein. Subject. Was is the verb. And then what was he? Genius. A modifies genius a bit, limits it. Of course, in either of these examples, the reason why we offset it or attach it to the front or back with a comma, again, is that it is not an independent clause. If someone just says to you, walks up to you and says, of course, right, you would have to say, of course what? Now, so here, because of course it's functioning more as an interjection in both of these cases, that's why we offset it with a comma. Here we have our independent clause as Matt is very intelligent. That's our independent clause in both of these two sentences here. Notice that in either case, the although part is divided by a comma, because although he failed the math class, whether we state that at the beginning of a sentence or the end is a dependent clause. So that's one of our other rules. Whenever we have an independent clause butting up against a dependent clause, or vice versa, then we use a comma. Okay? It's only when we have independent clause that we would usually use a semicolon. Okay, and placing commas around both sides of a non-essential component of a sentence. Now, if you're not familiar with this idea, quite rightly you should be asking what Mr. M is a non-essential component. The answer to that, understanding if something is a non-essential component, always remember these 2 points. For something in the middle of a sentence to be considered a non-essential component or term, if you were to take that data out of the middle of the sentence and just have the remainder as a sentence by itself, the sentence would have to fulfill these two criteria. It would still have to be grammatically correct. In other words, it would still have to have a subject, verb, and object, and it would also have to still contain or still display a logical statement without that information in the middle. So to demonstrate that idea of a non-essential component, I've given you these two grammatically correct and one grammatically incorrect example. So, if we say the full sentence here with the non-essential component is, and let me get that crap off the screen again, sorry. Hope none of you are offended, by the way, by my use of that word. But when we look at the first sentence here, Henry Banks, an avid fisherman and grandfather of 3, died today. The middle component, the middle part, what's bracketed by commas, is what we're thinking about here. Now, pretend that was removed from the sentence, and you just had, Henry Banks died today. Sure, to be less informative, but is that a logical, complete statement? Yeah, it is, because Henry Banks is our subject, and the verb died because it's a transitive verb, or what's sometimes called an action verb. The reason why I don't like it when people call transitive verbs just action verbs, that in a limited sense, that's correct. But the other thing that makes a verb transitive is that verb can also function as its own object. You don't necessarily need something following it to have a complete sentence. So if you were to just say, Henry Banks died, without even saying today, stipulating when, what would we have some idea of what Henry Banks did? Yeah, we would know that he died. Yeah. So you see how when we just have a transitive verb that can double as its own object. And because of that, because we can just say Henry Banks died today, we add in that modifier and have that be a logical statement and a grammatically correct independent clause. That's why we can put commas around that stuff in the middle, around that non-essential component. Similar concept here. Look at the other grammatically correct example. Tara James, comma, the evening's keynote speaker, comma, will present the Volunteer of the Year award. Now, again, let's focus in on that information between the commas. If we just say, Tara James will present the Volunteer of the Year award, is that a grammatically correct and logical statement? Yeah, it is on both accounts. It fulfills both of those criteria because we have Tara James as the subject, will present as our conjugated verb pair, and what will she present? The Volunteer of the Year award. Sorry about that, folks. Unfortunately, I don't have the money to purchase a more advanced program that would allow me to not have to worry about little snafus like that, but I'm doing the best with what resources I have. So, apologize if anyone's bothered by that little flip away there, but we move on. So that's why we can put the commas on either side of the non-essential component here, the evening's keynote speaker. Because without it, the sentence is still grammatically correct, and it still displays a logical statement. If you were to just say, Tara James will present the Volunteer of the Year award, it fulfills both of those criteria. But, look what we have here. The one grammatically incorrect example. The reason why we should not have the commas here on either side of this non-essential component is if you just say all by itself, cats are rare. Do we have an independent clause? Yeah, we do. Cats, subject, verb, are, object, rare. But is the statement, cats are rare, a logical statement? No. Because even if you don't like cats, some people do. I will admit I have a cat and I spoil her to death, so y'all can make fun of me for that. That's okay. But even if you don't like cats, cats are a commonplace feature of the world that we live in. Heck, they might even outnumber people. I don't know. But that's why there should not be commas on either side of this part here. The grammatically correct version of this sentence would just be, cats which have extra toes are rare, with no commas whatsoever. Okay, and that's it. That's the end of it. But again, look over this lecture, look over the web link. Have any questions? Let me know. That's what I'm here for. Till then, y'all have a good night and take care. Be well. And think happy thoughts as I try to back away from this silly presentation without swearing like a sailor. And 1, 2, 3. Good night, folks, and have a pleasant tomorrow. Bye.